Ma Bell, champagne, and COVID-19 are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is December 31st. That means it is the 365th day of the year. We got 0 days left until 2022. Tomorrow morning. Today is the 53rd Friday in the 53rd week. And it's the 11th day of winter. We got 79 days left until spring. If today's your birthday, you are a Capricorn, and you were almost a New Year's baby. Today is National Champagne Day. National Champagne Day recognizes the wine that puts the pop in every New Year's Eve celebration. Like I always say, I go to the websites for these things, and they always have the lamest, I don't know what it is, the lamest explanation or title for these things. It's just weird. Puts the pop in New Year's celebration. Genuine champagne only comes from France's Champagne region. French law protects how champagne is made and where it's made. They have a few exceptions, but for the most part, it's got to come from the Champagne region, and it has certain specifications to meet the standard to be called champagne. Champagne's not the only thing that the French government gets involved in. They have some other things like cheese and some other beverages that have to be made a certain way in a certain area to be labeled something. But that's for another day. All right, let's see what else December 31st has given us. 1759, Arthur Guinness signs a 9,000-year lease, and he starts brewing Guinness beer, which is my favorite beer. When I used to do stand-up comedy, I had a joke where I said, I like my beer like I like my women, dark, thick, and loaded with alcohol. Always a good laugh. 1796, the incorporation of Baltimore as a city goes down. 1796, wow. 1831, Gramercy Park is deeded to New York City. 1879, Thomas Edison demonstrates the incandescent light to the public for the first time in Menlo Park, New Jersey. 1907, the first New Year's Eve celebration is held in Times Square. Back then, it was known as Longacre Square, and it's in Manhattan. You know, I've tried to enjoy the New Year's celebration if I'm at home on New Year's, which, you know, as you get older, you start doing that a lot more. And I've been doing it for quite a few years now. It's not worth the headache to go out on New Year's, especially with COVID. It's just a pain. But, you know, it's just not the same without Dick Clark. I know he hasn't been doing it in years, but man, he was just part of those things. Almost like when Johnny Carson quit The Tonight Show, it felt like something, you know, some part of your life just faded away. You know, you went to bed listening to Johnny Carson, and you brought in the new year listening to Dick Clark. It's weird how we as humans get used to something like that. 1955, General Motors becomes the first U.S. corporation to make over $1 billion in a year. Just for reference, $1 billion in 1955 has the equivalent purchasing power of about $10 billion now, $10,371 million. 1983, AT&T Bell System is broken up by the United States government. Back then, most people kind of referred to it as Ma Bell. Bell System was a system of companies led by Bell Telephone Company, and later became AT&T, that dominated the telephone services industry in North America for over 100 years, from 1877 till its breakup in 1883. And they were pretty much everything to the United States when it came to communication. The Bell System effectively owned most telephone services in the United States by 1940, both local and long-distance services. They had like 85% of all telephone services in the Caribbean, Canada, and the United States at one point. So it was around the 1950s that the US government started looking into them and started telling them they had to do certain things because they were kind of shady. Besides having essentially a monopoly throughout North America and the Caribbean, they owned the companies that made telephones, the actual physical telephone, and you had to basically buy their phone. If you wanted one that was made by another company, you actually had to pay big fees to have them come out and like rewire the phone and just all this weird stuff, licensing fees to use another phone. They just did anything they could to basically make you buy their phones, use their service, and just own all of it. By the 1950s, they also owned 55% of the phone services in Japan. They also had the Department of Justice breathing down their neck and doing all kinds of investigations, and in 1956, they did put these restrictions on them. Those restrictions were never really lived up to until the DOJ got involved again in the mid-70s, when the Department of Justice in 1974 alleged that Bell Systems had ongoing illegal practices by its various companies to stifle competition in the telecommunication industry. In 1982, the Department of Justice and Bell Systems came to an agreement when Bell Systems finally realized they had no hopes of winning any more lawsuits against the Department of Justice. And in the agreement, they were ordered to break itself up. Now, all these little companies that they turned into became known as Baby Bells. They were independent of Bell Systems. Several of those Baby Bells to this day are about as big as Bell Systems was back then. But it's not all owned by one company now. I wish I could find it, but years ago I watched this thing on like the History Channel and they talked about all the different shady stuff they were doing, and they was a monopoly, and it was flagrant and it was right in your face, and the Justice Department and the US government had been on their ass to tell them to knock it off for years, and they never did. They just kept going. At least that's how it's put out to you when you're watching something on the History Channel. They just were kind of blowing off the Department of Justice, it seemed like. 2010, tornadoes touched down in the Midwest and southern United States, including Washington County, Arkansas, Greater St. Louis, Sunset Hills, Missouri, Illinois, and Oklahoma. With a few tornadoes in the early hours, a total of 36 tornadoes touched down, resulting in the death of 9 people and doing over $100 million in damages. It's a rough day. 2019, the World Health Organization is informed of cases of pneumonia with an unknown cause detected in Wuhan, China. This later turns out to be COVID-19, the cause of the COVID-19 pandemic. 2020, the World Health Organization issues its first emergency use validation for a COVID-19 vaccination. Movies released on December 31st. You know, they don't release a lot of movies on New Year's Eve. It's weird. There's very few to choose from, but I did see this one and it was pretty good. 2014, A Most Violent Year. It's set in 1981 New York City. It centers around an immigrant who's trying to protect his family and his business in an extremely dangerous year in New York City. And historically, this was like the most violent year New York City's seen. One of them, I should say. They had a lot of good people in this movie. Had Jessica Chastain, Oscar Isaac, Ashley Williams, who I like, and Elias Gabel, who you probably don't know who he is. If you ever watched this show, Scorpion, he plays Walter on there. He's a great actor. He also had a bit part in Game of Thrones. And if you watch him on Scorpion, he sounds like a normal American dude, but if you see an interview, he's very British. At least I think he's British. Either way, he's a good actor. I like him. It also had Albert Brooks in this movie. Really strange thing I just found out about Albert Brooks. Now, I was a stand-up comedian, and I've always been into stand-up and just comedy in general, my whole life. A lot of kids grow up watching their favorite sports stars and, being a big fan of them, and not me. Stand-up comedians. Albert Brooks is a great comic, great comedic actor now. I did not know this. His brother was Super Dave Osborne, who just died. In 2017, his real name is Bob Einstein. That would mean Albert Brooks' real name is Albert Einstein. I wonder why he changed it. Anyway, A Most Violent Year from 2014, it's worth a watch. Born on December 31st, 1937, Anthony Hopkins. He's a Welsh actor best known for his portrayal as the serial killer Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. He's done so many other things. He's Nixon, he's been in Thor. Yeah, he's great. Westworld on HBO, that's pretty good. I like that. He was encouraged by actor Richard Burton, who is incredibly famous, to pursue an acting career at age 15. He has a lot of famous roles, but one of my favorite that he played in was Meet Joe Black. That's a great movie if you ever get a chance. Died on December 31st, 2015, Natalie Cole. She was a jazz and pop vocalist who was the daughter of Nat King Cole, who my grandmother loved. Back when I was a kid, she would always put his records on. I grew up listening to Nat King Cole. Love his voice. Not my type of music, but if I hear him, I get relaxed. She sold more than 30 million records over the course of her career. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Tonight is New Year's Eve. Be very safe if you're going out. I mean, not a lot of us are going out anymore because of COVID. Maybe in a couple of years we will. But be safe while you're out so we can have a good year together in 2022. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Be nice to each other.